On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, the Toronto Raptors get swept out of the season series by the Boston Celtics with a noble 105-96 loss. We'll dig into the defense, which actually looked credible last night for the first time in quite some time. And of course, the parade of bricks that they threw up from deep. All that coming up on today's show. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, January the 16th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I'm covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the website that don't work so good, at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. It's a beautiful place to be. Lots of sickos just like you hanging out, talking ball, doing so in a friendly fashion. It's a beautiful thing. We've created a little oasis of hoop talk on the internet over there in the Discord. The link is in the description. It's free to join. Would love to see you join us in there to be part of our listener family. Of course, you can find the show for free on your favorite podcast apps. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Always appreciated. And we are on YouTube as well. You can subscribe to the video version of the show. Just go to YouTube, find the channel, subscribe, hit the little notification bell, and you will never miss an episode when we premiere. So you can hang out with all the little sickos in the chat. There's sickos everywhere. We love it. We love the sickos. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And we will get started by welcoming in one of my favorite dudes to just talk ball with, be it on the internet, be it on a podcast. He is, of course, a pickup legend in Milton, Ontario. He is the author of Prose Claws, a wonderful newsletter on the Toronto Raptors. It's Asad Alvi at Swar Lasers on that website that's not so good. Asad, how's it going, man?
It's going all right. You know, we had a bit of a game yesterday. Speaking of sickos, it was definitely one for the sickos yesterday, but you know, we're ready here to talk about it, I guess.
Yeah, we're going to dig into the Raptors 105-96 loss to the Celtics. I feel like anytime someone digs in to watch the Boston Celtics, they're doing some sort of self-harm. They're a miserable team to watch. I'm sorry. They're incredible. They're a machine. They're probably going to win the NBA title, and they play the most bland, analytics brained basketball you'll ever see with the most white bread, boring superstar in the NBA. I'm sorry, but the Celtics continue to irritate me, and they irritate me a lot when the Raptors play good defense and just can't scrape it over the finish line because of a really, really bad regression to the mean wave of three-point shooting, which we will get into. We'll talk about the offense a little bit, but I do think, Asad, look, we're at a point now. The Toronto Raptors, they're 15-25. They're not really falling below 12th in the Eastern Conference. They are very much seemingly going to be in a battle between the Nets, the Hawks, and the Bulls for the last two play-in spots from here to the end of the season. I don't think it's all that high stakes. I really think the on-court process stuff and watching the sort of gelling of the new guys is the single most important thing to take away and enjoy from this season. So we're not going to start on a negative note despite the loss. We're going to talk about defense because, Asad, the Raptors actually played some last night against the Celtics. The Celtics scored us 105 points. They're held to an 89.8 offensive rating in the half court. Of course, they're a very good offensive team, one of the best, and the Raptors did a pretty good job of shutting off the faucet. We'll start there. We'll get into the other stuff. We got good, bad, coming up later. But Asad, impressions of the defense. Darko Rajakovic talked before the game about kind of changing up the coverages a little bit. I think we saw some new stuff. What were your impressions of the defense in this game? How did the Raptors manage to have one of their better defensive efforts in months?
Well, there's always attention to detail stuff, in terms of making sure you're switching cleanly and communicating there. The Celtics are a little bit easier to deal with in the sense that they don't necessarily have as many downhill attackers. Like Derek White's their main downhill guy. Jason Tatum can get downhill, but a lot of the times against the Raptors, they were able to lock him up topside, and the Raptors just have the type of personnel to deal with those kind of wings, where you saw a lot of the damage that Tatum did in the last night's game was coming off of screens, off ball, on a back cut, and then getting loose and then getting downhill. But he had to make his decisions a lot faster. The Raptors also were very help heavy last night. Obviously,
Mhm.
they had to with Kristaps because they don't have Jakob. So anytime Kristaps got the ball, they were a lot more aggressive, sending help, and then rotating, which is something we saw last season as well from this Raptors team. So it's not necessarily something that's new. Makes sense given their strengths as being, a long team that can get into passing lanes and then force some turnovers. And that's kind of where they found some of their success early in the game, especially in the third quarter when they kind of opened up a lead, was they were getting stops, turning them over, and getting back out and breaking on the Celtics.
Mhm.
But I think the biggest real those are all things in the defense that you can always improve. It's effort related stuff, detail related stuff. But the biggest one was actually the rebounding,
Yeah.
where they very much put the focus in to gang rebound against the Celtics team that does like to crash. Emmanuel quickly pointed out in his post game that they knew that the Celtics team liked to crash, so their biggest thing was get the rebound and then get out in transition because you can hurt them early
Mhm.
in transition if you do that. So the team did a great job on the glass. I think the Celtics as a team only had 5 offensive rebounds,
Yeah.
which like 5 offensive rebounds is not it's not a great amount like for a team that gets a lot of offensive rebounds, and for a Raptor team that's been giving up like double-digit offensive rebounds nightly. It's definitely like a big difference for them. The Raptors have been getting hurt on the offensive glass basically since the trade. Even before the trade, that was basically where the weak point started, and it's why the Jakob units always look a little bit better because there's just a little bit more defensive rebounding.
Mhm.
And probably the biggest element of the rebounding was, Scottie Barnes has 11 defensive rebounds. He's a little bit closer
Yep.
to the net in today's coverages. He played a little bit at the 5 tonight as well. And it helps stabilize the Raptors defense when you have, big guys in the paint rebounding. And I think long term, that is probably where they're going to find success defensively. Of course, like there may be, development stuff that they want to do with Scottie on the perimeter and stuff like that, obviously. But I think we do have a large sample knowing that when you have Scottie Barnes out there and you want to be a good defensive unit, you want to get him closer to the basket.
Yeah, I think even last night his best defensive moments came as like a backline rim protector, as has been the case for the majority of his career, except for that one game where he chased Steph Curry around really effectively. It's been a struggle, and actually we'll get into his struggles on the perimeter against Jason Tatum in particular a little bit later on, at least in my good, bad, we'll get into that. But yeah, I think the defensive rebounding point's a really important one. Like this team, it's less dependent on defensive rebounds to like run effective offense than it used to be, obviously, because the offense can score outside of transition now, which is a beautiful thing. But obviously last night the Celtics did a pretty damn good job locking them up. A offensive rating in the 4th percentile per clean the glass in the half court for the Raptors last night. The Celtics will put the clamps on you. They're like a vice, and it's horrifying. They're going to win the championship, aren't they? I hate it. I really hate it, man. But yeah, I thought this was a game where, yeah, maybe they needed those defensive boards to run off of more than they would in this typical game in the sort of post-trade era. I thought there was some nice moments where, they were pretty liberal with the switching as well. Obviously going a little bit smaller, that's going to be kind of the thing you lean into probably. But even when Jontay Porter was in there, he had some moments. He had one possession where he switched on to Derek White and kind of hung with him for like 10, 12 seconds and had a block, which was like, okay, didn't know Jontay Porter had that in his bag defensively, but that's nice to see. And yeah, I thought they mixed it up pretty nicely. And when they did switch and kind of get those mouse in the house situations, like you talked about, where quickly he's guarding Porzingis down to the block, I thought Pascal did a really good job kind of being the second guy over, as he's always been. Like that was kind of his main role in a lot of Nick Nurse defenses, obviously, kind of flying over, being that second guy there to force the kick and the swing. And, some moments where the rotations weren't totally on point, a little bit slow, a step behind, but for the most part, the detail stuff was pretty interesting. And anything on defense where they show some life is encouraging to me. Like this is clearly the thing they have to do to get their house in order as the season progresses. It's been, I think going into last night, they were 26th in defense since the trade. So, and obviously not having Jakob really, really inhibits their ability to sort of perform at their top end defensively. But, some nice stuff last night. A nice step forward for a defense that has been on hard times of late, despite the loss. We're going to come back, Asad, get into the offense, which was a brick machine last night. We'll talk about that and what went wrong. Pascal Siakam, Scottie Barnes, et cetera, et cetera. We'll get to that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with trying to change ourselves instead of just expanding on the stuff that we're already doing right. Therapy helps you find your strengths so you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that will actually stick. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You can just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. That's a big deal. Having the proper therapist who you connect with, have a good connection with, who makes sense, who listens, all that stuff. It's really important. Not everyone's going to be the right fit, but you can switch that therapist anytime for no additional charge with BetterHelp. Celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedInNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the single best sports book in all the land. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's all you got to do. Place a bet. Win or lose, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets to go peruse the FanDuel website, where there's tons of stuff for you to go throw some money down on. You got the live same game parlay, which is a fun thing. Maybe you're attending a game, you want to juice up the action while you're in attendance. You do that live same game parlay, get a few players on an entry, and go have yourself a ball. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays. Maybe you'll be like me. You put down one bet a year. Last year I put money on the Denver Nuggets to win the title, and I won, and it was great. You can always do that as well. Be the single bet champ, just like me. Go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Okay, continuing on here with Asad Alvi from the Prose and Claws newsletter, among other areas of Raptors internet. Asad, let's dive into the offense from last night against the Boston Celtics. That regression wave came crashing like a tsunami, did it not? 4 of 32 from deep. Siakam 0 for 6 after being like 70% over the last handful of games. Scottie Barnes 0 for 2. Jontay Porter 0 for 2. RJ Barrett 0 for 4. The Raptors go 2 of 21 among their starters. Emmanuel quickly 2 of 7, the only starter to hit a 3 in this game. Not what you want against a Boston Celtics team that is going to make life difficult for you getting to the rim. The Raptors actually did a decent job scoring from 2 in this game, but you just are not going to beat the Boston Celtics shooting 4 of 32 from deep, considering the math edge they walk into every game with as an extremely high volume 3-point shooting team. You can stop them from 2 all you want, and they did last night. 17 of 43 from 2 were the Boston Celtics, but Derek White, Drew Holiday bombing away. Tough stuff to deal with. Was there anything, we're now at a couple games in a row here, Asad, where the Raptors have come up against kind of zone-heavy teams. We saw, of course, the Celtics last night and the Jazz in that nasty schedule loss on Friday, where the Jazz throw all kinds of junk at you. And the Raptors have had some trouble both nights kind of carving things up. I think the Raptors, they shot well from 3 in that Jazz game, which kind of bailed out their numbers, but it was not a very good offensive performance, I would argue. Anything you're noticing here the last couple of games about the way the offense is congealing? Obviously, they looked like they were really kind of on a heater there for the first 5 or 6 games after the trade. Anything of concern here, or is just a couple of junky defenses in a couple of games where the Raptors have gone cold, and at least in the second one here, going 4 of 32, which they will probably not do all that often. What were your thoughts on the way the offense performed or did not perform in this game against Boston?
I think part of it is definitely they went cold. Obviously, they're the worst percentage the Raptors have shot since 2012 or 2011. I think Kirthik had that stat. But I always hesitate when you have a bad shooting night against the zone, because a lot of times it's a compounding effect where it's on a regular night, the shots that you're getting for your guys are out of the rhythm of the offense. So you're getting open threes, they're shot ready for them, and they know that that's the shot that's coming. This is the play we're running, we're getting a shot out of this, or I'm an option on this play, I'm going to get a shot out of this. Against the zone, I find the Raptors have been a little bit flummoxed in terms of how to set up, how to get how are they going to create their advantage, how are they going to attack the zone. And credit to the Celtics defense, a great defense. They do a lot of switching. They'll scram switch their small guys out once the switch doesn't work. There's one play I think the Raptors are trying to get Scottie Barnes a post up. It was either Scottie or Pascal post up against a small, and then by the time they were actually able to get to the post up, Al Horford was there. And it's You did all that work, you got all these switches, and then they managed to get it reset before you even got the ball to where you wanted to go. So I think part of it is that the Raptors obviously don't have the three-point shooting. They were short Gary Trent Jr. Yesterday. I think having that second real knockdown shooter out there, if they could have
It's
put
a lot of
lineup
Jalen McDaniels, man.
yeah. Like if you have Quickly and Gary Trent out there, it becomes a lot easier to, contort the zone. It's why the Raptors look best in those Quickly minutes. It's also why the Raptors offense fell apart at the end of the third quarter when the Celtics went on like a 20-4 run or something to close the quarter. When Quickly sat for 3 minutes. I think the Raptors only had 2 points to close the quarter or something like that. And it was you could just see the difference between when Quickly would have the ball or Quickly how the defense was reacting to him versus how they would react to basically anyone else on the Raptors. So yes, part of it's a cold shooting night, but again, part of the function is, and this is why you see a lot of teams struggle to shoot from three against the Miami Heat. We've seen that happen to the Raptors a lot, where you'll just have like these disgusting shooting nights against really zone heavy teams. And part of it feeds into each other. Team sees you're not making threes, against zone you more. And then as they start zoning you harder, you're suddenly feel like you're forcing open threes rather than, taking a natural open three. And then the second piece I have of concern for the Raptors offense is not even a concern point, but I think it's just a point of emphasis, is like they brought in Emmanuel Quickly. I understand that he wants to pass a little bit more. He wants to showcase his passing. But I do think that the piece that's missing for the Raptors right now is Quickly using his threat as a three-point shooter and actually taking some shots. He definitely uses his threat to contort the defense, but he just needs to get more attempts up. Right now he's averaging, I think per 36, I looked up, he's at 7.1 per game as a Raptor. As a New York Knick before the trade, he was at like near 8. And previously with the Knicks, he's been at around that 8 mark per 36. He needs to be like above 8, like 8 to 9 shot attempts a game from three himself. I would aim at 10 threes a game for Emmanuel Quickly. Like there's no reason not to if he's in a 33, 35 minute role. Similar for Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes only got 2 attempts up last night. Of course, that's a function of when you're beating a zone, you need to have your bigs that are going to pass out of the middle of the zone and collapse it. So Scottie was in that role a lot more. But you need him to be at the 5 to 6 3-point range. And maybe that means putting Pascal more on ball in the middle of the floor and Scottie in the corner. So that way the defense is helping off him versus having the flip where you have Pascal in the corner and Scottie on the ball in the middle. And it's just a matter of figuring out how to get the number of 3-point attempts up. Because even in the Jazz game, the Raptors shot 17 to 34, but they only got 34 threes up. If you can get that closer to 37, 38, 39 attempts on a night, I think that would be better for the Raptors in general. Not that their offense has been a massive problem, but if you're going to play better defense and play more half-court offense than against zones, you're going to need to be a bit better about parking your shooters where they're going to get a shot and then actually getting the shot attempts, like the volume of. Because last night the Raptors did deliver a lot of 3-point attempts to probably their worst 3-point shooters, which is what the Celtics would have wanted as their defensive game plan.
Yeah, for sure. You'd want that flipped, I think, 6 attempts to 2 attempts between Pascal and Scottie. And the point of putting Scottie off ball, I think, is a really good one. And, the sort of, if there's a certain corner of the fan base that'll be like, Scottie off the ball, how are you going to do that? But like, Scottie off the ball is amazing. He's been like one of the better spot up scorers in the league over the course of the season, like top quarter in terms of like the percentiles all season long as a spot up guy. It's because he's a 38% high volume shooter who, when a closeout comes his way, is causing all kinds of havoc getting downhill. And yeah, I think that is something that they can tap into a little bit. And I just, back to your Quickly point, so far with the Raptors, 8 games, he's averaging 2.8 pull-up attempts per game. He's shooting 36% on those. Fred VanVleet was averaging like 4.5 pull-ups during his time with the Raptors last season, especially after the trade with Jakob Poeltl. And obviously not having Poeltl for half of the games affects this. They haven't been able to run that Quickly and Poeltl pick and roll. That hurts, but I would like to see a little more of the Quickly and Pascal pick and roll stuff, the Quickly and Scottie pick and roll stuff. Like in particular, like the Quickly Scottie dynamic, there have been moments where it's looked really good, but I don't feel like they've tapped into that sort of dynamism that those two can have working in connection with one another quite enough. And I think that is a way that you kind of unlock those opportunities to quickly to kind of rain pull up threes on people's heads, is if you have people with like legitimate roll gravity or pop gravity to kind of give a little bit of space there, get those windows where quickly put it up. That's, I think, something I'd like to see a little bit more. Obviously tougher against a very good defense that's zoning you up and making things very difficult. But, I think that's a worthwhile thing to keep an eye on. And as far as like the zone busting, you know who they kind of miss zone busting? And this is a crazy statement. It's Precious Achiuwa a little bit, right? Like he could flash to the middle and just be like, well, I'm going to blow by the center and score. And like, that was like a pretty viable way for them to get easy buckets. Obviously, a third of those times he's booting it out of bounds and doing Precious things, but that was like a valuable little thing that they had in their toolbox that I don't know if they figured out a way to sort of counteract not having now.
When you talk about that role, it's interesting to see that the guy who had probably the most offensive success last night was RJ Barrett, because that's what he was doing. He catches off ball and just will attack. He will cut and he will cut and he will cut and he will drive. And he just kept getting to his left hand early in the game. I think he had like 10 in the first quarter. He was really buzzing in that game early on, where he was just blowing up the zone by cutting through the middle, attacking hard, driving hard. And that's stuff that you primarily would have wanted to see from Precious Achiuwa, and probably why I think RJ has looked so good as a Raptor is because he's getting a lot of the looks that not only is he finishing them fairly well outside of that one game against Utah, but he's been it's kind of a bit of comparison in your own head where on the same look I'm seeing like OG kind of awkwardly cut, or I'm seeing Precious Achiuwa accidentally dribble into three guys and commit an offensive foul, or decide to pass it as he's about to dunk the ball or something. I don't know. You can kind of make whatever decision he wants at any given moment. So it's nice to see someone so kind of single-minded in what they want to do and have decided and make a clear path for himself. Jumping back to the quickly point, it does suck that he's missing a screener in Jakob Poeltl. I do want to see him work more with Barnes, but I think the other thing the Raptors just in general need to do is they need to set the screens for him a lot higher. I think right now they've become so used to, I think, setting the screens at the 3-point line or a little bit under the 3-point line, that when they run that high pick and roll, or they run those pick and rolls for quickly, they're not setting the pick high enough. One of the things I looked at on Prose Claws on the Substack was I did a video on Immanuel Quickley's playmaking after the trade, and I looked at a lot of his playmaking looks out of the pick and roll, out of different situations, DHO. And one thing that was noted was New York set those screens really high for him. Of course, New York had some really big screeners. They have Mitchell Robinson, they've got Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, those are big body dudes, but they're setting the screen at like the 4-point line. And what that allows Quickley to do is Quickley has intense speed, but he loves kind of like just sticking on the screen. Like after the guy gets hit on the screen, he likes to stick there for a second to see what the defender is going to do. And then he kind of goes start, stop, and starts like jagging in and out and deciding what he wants to do. So I think the Raptors, that's the only thing that I would say they need to adjust a little bit on the Quickley stuff. And that kind of comes with, getting to know a player and like learning where they want the ball, where they want their screen, how they want the screen set. And it sucks that Poeltl's injured during this period, because I would love to see as much Jakob Poeltl and Immanuel Quickley 2-man game as possible. But that's one thing I would look out to see how the Raptors do better in terms of setting that screen for Quickley a lot higher up, so then it gives them more of a downhill to attack and also pop for that three when behind the line.
Yeah, that's like they have to condition themselves to not operating in a phone booth like they have for the last 6 years, 6 years, 3 years, whatever it's been. Obviously Fred was a bit of an agent for vertical spacing as well, but I don't think quite to the same degree that even Quickley can be kind of when fully unleashed. So yeah, I think that's a really good point on the RJ thing as well. I think, the way he's fit into the offense, I think it's kind of a thing where the system fits the things he does already well, right? Like moving off the ball, sort of just barraging his way to the rim, making quick decisions. Like it empowers him to do the stuff as like a scorer that he's always been good at, while also I think working against like his worst tendencies and kind of helping him, right? Because like this offense doesn't have room for him to have these sort of meandering long bully drives, right? It's got to be a lot more quick firing. And I think that's been a pretty nice marriage of player and system that we've seen so far. Also, he's got Thad Young throwing cool ass passes to him seemingly every time down the floor, which certainly helps. 7 assists for Thad. Incredible stuff. We'll leave it there, though. The good offense talk. We'll come back to the other side, get into the good, the bad, and the to round out today's episode. We'll do that in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by Jace Medical. Scar in The Lion King said it best. Be prepared. It's really all it comes down to. And specifically, that's like when you're traveling. When you're traveling, you want to be prepared. You want to have the essentials on hand in case you fall sick. Sometimes you fall sick when you're traveling. It can ruin your trip. You don't want that to happen. You're far away from medical attention. If you have the Jace case, though, it's a little bit easier to work that out. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff can happen to anybody, especially while you're traveling. The Jace case is simple. You order it. You hopefully never use it in your entire life, but you pack it in your bag as you travel. It's just tiny. It fits in there nicely next to your underwear or your shoes, whatever it might be. And you have it on hand in case you fall sick. You have access to all of their licensed physicians as well for direction on how to use it safely and properly if you do fall ill while you're abroad. Visit jacemedical.com, complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy for a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use the offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your first order. Rounding out the show here with Asad Alvi from Prose and Claws. And again, just sort of schooling fools at Milton Rec Centers for decades now, right? Is that kind of is that the storied career of Asad? Just
yeah, that's one way to age me. But yeah, no, it was kind of sad the other day. I was like, we're getting ready for our rec league season starting today. So I was looking at it and I just came across like, you know how Snapchat kind of throws you some memories?
Sure.
So it was like a clip of me like nailing like a half-court shot, like just in warm-ups. And I was like, oh, that's great. I'm like, oh, I remember this. And I'm like, oh, this is when I first joined this league. And then it's like 10 years ago. I'm like, that is depressing. But okay.
That's a long and storied career. I don't know what you're talking about. That's
I've gone from 220-pound shooting guard to 300-pound point center, but that's what happens.
My favorite kind of basketball player in general. So, I can't wait to. We just got the email about the Raptors Republic 3-on-3 tournament coming back in March. I can't wait to see you.
That's perfect. March. I was wondering when that was going to happen. So,
right.
All I remember is Sean Woodley taking out my ankle many years ago.
Because I crossed you up so bad, or did I like injure you?
No, we were on defense, and Sean Woodley just decided he was going to set the nastiest screen. And I have the video footage. He clearly targeted my ankle, but it's fine. It's fine. We will get revenge one day.
I went to the Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka School of Screens. It's no one's calling it a pickup, so I don't know. Let's wrap it up here with the good, the bad, and the We will use things from the basketball game last night, not our pickup or rec league exploits. What was your good from last night's game, Asad?
The defensive rebounding. It was great. It was awesome.
There you go.
I loved it.
Perfect.
Jontay Porter, like, again, I don't think much of Jontay Porter, but like in terms of like he had to start in a spot and he looked okay in it. You mentioned earlier his like closeout stuff. There's actually a sequence in the Sacramento game where I think he had to do 3 times. He had to on the same play because they kept giving up offensive rebounds, or I think Sacramento kept passing out of it. But Jontay closed out to the 3-point shooter, then stuck with the shooter through the dive, then had to close out to another 3-point shooter, stick with him, and then it was like 3 times in a row on the same play. And I'm like, that's impressive to me. I don't think he's necessarily a good defender, but he's definitely not a bad defender. I think he's got some chops there at least.
He tries.
And hard.
He's smart. Yeah. I think he kind of understands where to be, even though he's overcoming kind of a very apparent lack of athleticism. But point well taken. My good is we mentioned it before. RJ Barrett's cutting. Man, the dude cuts with such force, and it's beautiful to behold. He's just like slingshotting his way to the basket. Thad Young, of course, finding him a couple times last night. And I do not envy anyone who's like meeting RJ Barrett at the rim. That dude is a tank, and watching him kind of work off ball, find the pockets of the defense where he can attack. I think the role he's in right now on offense is perfect, and I would prefer if the Raptors didn't trade away a very important offensive player who allows RJ Barrett to occupy this lower leverage off-ball role, but we can save that for another day or any of the last 6 podcasts we've recorded if you want to go check that out. What you got for your bad in this one?
The bad, it's pretty... The shooting, like I don't know. It's such an obvious bad that I don't really know what to say. But I think
you have a deep cut bad. You can go there too. You can talk about Chris Boucher if you want.
Yeah, no, Chris Boucher. I don't mind Chris. Chris has a lot of good energy. It just like shots don't go down, they don't go down. But like,
yeah,
I think Thad Young at one point airballed a corner 3-pointer like 2 feet long, and I was like, all right, so that's our night today. That's great.
Remember when Nick Nurse just stuck him in the corner for like an entire back half of a season after the trade deadline? That was cool.
Yeah. The thing was, he made his first couple that season. So it was like, oh,
they fixed him. The shot doctors have gotten to him. He's good. Yeah, that was rough stuff. That we can highlight that one Thad 3 as the bad if you want. On an otherwise solid night, the team leader in plus minus Thad Young in this game. But yeah, that was rough. My bad is Scottie and Pascal's perimeter defense in this one. In particular, the stretch where in the late third quarter, Jason Tatum is eviscerating Scottie Barnes every single time down the floor as they are talking about Scottie Barnes in the sideline report with Kayla, talking about like Scottie Barnes is ready for these big time matchups. He's talking about it all the time, how he wants these big assignments. He talks to Darko about it as Jason Tatum is cooking him for a personal 8-0 run. That hit pretty hard. There was also a couple moments where Siakam hits his peaks on defense. He also has had plenty of blow-bys allowed this season, and I think there were a few in last night's game, particularly the first of Jason Tatum's 2 very loud dunks back-to-back. Again, they got roasted by Tatum in a lot of, he didn't have a great game overall, just 19 on pretty inefficient shooting, but the moments where Tatum was cooking, it was Siakam and Barnes who were, I suppose, in the pan. I don't know. It was not the best. So that was my bad.
That actually just reminded me of the bad that I think that really did stick out. Third quarter, the Raptors were on a bit of a run, and they had played such good defense. They had turned him over. Pascal's breaking. They've got Tatum in front of them or somebody in front of them. He kicks it back to Scottie Barnes. It's a 2-on-1 fast break. They've got quickly shooting to the corner. And then Scottie Barnes does like a no-look pass to Pascal. It's a 2-on-1. And just like no looks it, but Tatum doesn't look with him, and it just becomes a steal. And then the Celtics just have this onslaught afterwards. At that point, I think both Pascal and Scottie had gotten pretty tired. I think they were late in their shift anyways. But that was like the one where I was just like, oh, man. Like, I love no-look passes. Don't get me wrong. It's my favorite pass. That's the only pass I throw nowadays is no-looks. But, like, so I have nothing against a no-look pass. I love it. But, man, when you screw it up, it just it hurts. But
it is.
That was probably the bad.
It is also like pretty stark anytime you see Scottie and Pascal bungle a fast break, considering that's like instant buckets most of the time. Yeah, that did feel like a big one. Because, I think Holiday came down, hit a shot, and then the run kind of began there. Bummer. Let's go to the What you got for your from this game, Asad?
I think it was just intriguing to see that they could play defense, like in general. Like, the fact that they could rebound. It was. I was.
We're on theme today, baby.
I'm like, I don't know if they could rebound. And they actually showed that they could rebound. I was actually very. I was interested by that. But
Scottie's a hell of a rebounder when he's like really doing it, man. He's really, really good at it when he's locked in. Yeah. Sorry, did you have something else you wanted to add there?
No, the only other thing was, again, like Jontay Porter is very interesting. I like him. I don't know what it is. I liked he went with like a Drake comeback season type cut, tried to keep it nice and tight. He's got the facial hair nice and tight. So, look like an old Drake album cover, but shout out to him. You get your first start, you got to look good for it, and he came and made sure he looked good for his first start.
Yeah, man.
Aesthetically. Actually, my favorite thing, NBA thing is the first game back after a road trip. Everybody gets back to their barbers. Everybody gets a clean cut, and everybody looks clean again. It's like, oh yeah, their braids are redone, everything. So I'm like, oh yeah, back
Love
to
it.
the road.
My whom is also Jontay Porter related. You mentioned him getting the start. I thought he performed reasonably well in the first half. It'd be nice if he could hit some shots. He was 1 of 5, 0-2 from deep, but some nice passing. You mentioned the rebounds. You mentioned the defense. Then he gets 10 seconds of action in the second half. He fouls Kristaps on the offensive end, gets his 4th foul, and then never sees the floor again. Bit of a weird one. I know Darko went small and there was a lot of logic to going small late in this game, I thought, and they obviously made a pretty decent push to close, and their defense held up pretty admirably even without Jontay out there. But it did feel a little strange that he was just pinned to the bench after picking up his 4th foul. I don't know if that says anything about Darko's belief in Jontay Porter. It might have just been game flow. It might have just been matchups and all of that. But, keep an eye on that one because that was a pretty quick hook. And, the 4th foul is going to get you there. But could have gone back in it probably at some point.
It seemed in that second half he really liked the McDaniels look more than he liked the Porter look. And, I guess I get it because it lets you, in theory, get out and transition more, be a little bit more switchable, maybe gives you a little bit more 3-point shooting, though I don't imagine how much. McDaniels did hit his first 3 in the game.
He hit a 3 in transition that was wide open that I was certain was bricking because he's bricked shot.
He hit a quarter of the Raptors threes. So you know what? If you've got a guy who's hit a quarter of your threes, you got to play him. So I actually don't. I don't mind the decision. Actually, looking back at it. But
man, it's a rough shooting night when your best shooter by percentage is Jalen McDaniels from deep.
Hey, Jalen McDaniels actually he hit a 3 tonight. He was one of the few Raptors to hit a 3, and then the other night against Utah, I think he was one of 2 Raptors to shoot over 50% from inside the arc, which was Chris Boucher was 1 of 1, and he was 4 of 5. I'm
we've stumbled onto a sneaky here. Is Jalen McDaniels revived? Is he back? Is he a rotation player, or is he just about to be traded to the Bucks for a future 2nd-round pick? We'll see. We will leave it there, though. Asad, thanks so much for hanging out, man. It was great having you. Do you have anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Yeah, of course. Always check us out on Substack, Prose Claws. Myself and Iman are always putting out work there, Raptors and NBA related. I did a couple of breakdowns that are great video watches that you can watch on YouTube as well. Just breaking down play-by-play, both RJ Barrett's 37-point game as well as Emmanuel Quickly's playmaking. Those are all good watches. We also have more content coming out more or less weekly coming up. And, hopefully the Raptors give us, some good games to over on this little home trip to give us something to talk about.
Yeah, man, it does feel like one of the least deserved 4-game losing streaks, but they are on a 4-game losing streak. They should probably start to rack up some dubs here at some point. The Heat will be tough. The Bulls, hopefully not tough. We'll see. Just a banger of a game in the play-in race. Bulls, Raptors. Just you can't keep these 2 teams from playing high leverage, high stakes basketball, baby. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again on Wednesday. I'm hoping to get Katie Heindel on the show, but I know she's up at the cottage and it's snowy and blustery, and I'm not sure if she'll have internet to do that. So we might do a mailbag show, something like that. Either way, back again tomorrow. We got Jamar Hines coming along on Thursday. We got Tony East from Locked On Pacers on Friday to talk about, well, what we're going to talk about with the Pacers host, but that's going to be up on Friday as well. Thank you so much for hanging, and extend Pascal Siakam now. Bye-bye.